Hello, everyone, and it was a not-so-super weekend for the Montreal Canadiens. We have your game recaps, injury updates, and more.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1008 of Locked On Canadiens, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every single day of the week, 5 days a week, first thing in the morning. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get a $100 match on your first deposit. Some terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. We are your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast. Like I said, we're here 5 days a week to give you everything that you are looking for. I am one of your hosts. I'm Scott Matla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, it was Kids Weekend, Super Bowl weekend, matinee weekend for the Montreal Canadiens, and we got the best of both worlds, the bad and the even more awful this weekend. It was an experience, I think, this weekend for the Montreal Canadiens. How are you feeling off the heels of their loss to the St. Louis Blues here on Sunday?
Well, I'm going to be really honest, and I don't want people yelling at me for this, but I did expect 2 losses. I just thought, like you said they would get a point. I also thought so. I didn't think the loss of St. Louis would be as bad as it was. It felt like nobody showed up for the game. But historically, I feel like these midday games are not great for the Habs. I don't think they're great for anybody, honestly. If I'm used to performing at 7 p.m. at night, like trying to get it together for like 1 p.m., which is usually when I take my pregame nap. I find is like they were taking their pregame nap. It was just during official NHL games. But the kids seem to have fun. Like I was with friends yesterday walking past the Bell Center as people were filing out, and it was a lot of families and stuff. So at least it felt like, at least that was fun. I was a bit curious as to why they played Samuel Montembeault. I mean, I know I predicted that's what they would do because it was Saturday. But I was a bit curious about that because I really would have wanted to see a lot more showcasing of both the goalies that are not Samuel Montembeault. But other than that, honestly, like I'm a little bit more concerned about injuries just for the sakes of the players.
So we will get into the injuries in the next segment because it's not like, oh, it was one or something. It's multiple potentially large looming injuries over the Canadiens. I know. A change of pace. It's so different for us on this podcast in the last 3 years that we were talking about devastating injuries to young pieces of this team. For those who might have missed the games, Saturday I was out and about preparing for Carly's 30th birthday party, so I was able to catch bits and pieces of the Habs and Stars game. The Habs lost 3-2 to the Dallas Stars, but honestly, for a team as good as Dallas is, the Canadiens kept pace with they lost, but it's a good loss. Samuel Montembeault looked incredible yet again. Nick Suzuki scored a goal. Cole Caulfield kept his point streak going. Juraj Slafkovsky scored a goal off his back foot from no angle along the goal line. Top shelf. All good things that happened in a loss to a good Dallas team. And I look at that and I go, if that is how you're going to lose games, then hell yeah, sign me up, brother. That's perfect. Everyone agreed that they left that game. It's like, yeah, they got 0 points, so they're dropping down the standings, and all the key pieces looked good. Outshot a little bit, but again, Dallas is a good team. So I had the feeling going into a game against the Blues. The Blues played yesterday as well at the same time as the Canadiens in Buffalo. So they were traveling to this game. No matter what, the Blues were traveling to Montreal for this game. And the Canadiens right from the outset were not there. They gave up a goal, I believe it was 33 seconds into the game, and you could just tell it was going to be that kind of night. They ended up losing 7-2 to the St. Louis Blues. They got a 5-minute power play after Sammy Blais hit Jordan Harris from behind in the head and knocked him out of the game. More on that in another segment. And on a 5-minute power play, they scored at the very last second. Juraj Slafkovsky teed up Nick Suzuki. Suzuki scored. Great. Good things happening. And then the wheels fell off from there. They got a late consolation goal, I believe, that made it like 5-2. They got a power play chance, and this was their last gasp to kind of get into it. Matheson hits the post, Caulfield misses the rebound, and that was the last bit of it. And it was a game that got weirdly chippy. Even after the Blay hit where he was given 5 in a game, he was ejected. There, a call that I actually agree with in that regard. And then it got oddly chippy at the end, and things, as they often do when your team is bad and you're frustrated, you start fighting people and slashing people and everything else. It's such a letdown that the Caps game, they scored goals. They did pretty well in that one. All the key pieces were contributing in that one. Dallas game, they lost. Key pieces contributing, didn't look out of place. In the game against St. Louis, they couldn't get a save to save their lives in this one. And that's what it comes down to, is the Stars kind of scored on a bunch of ugly looking power play goals and flukes, and the Habs had nothing. Martin St. Louis looked exhausted by the end of the game for every penalty call, every goal against, everything. He looks like a coach who is very, very frustrated with what is going on right now. And I don't know what else that he can do right now. They're going to be they're 3 bodies down by the end of the Blues game. It's a problem right now, and it isn't worthwhile to ignore that fact.
And that's the thing. There's still some time for some bodies to be brought in. I think the big question is, what does the front office want to do in terms of what gets shipped out? Like, you're not going to trade your picks, you need them. You're not going to trade good prospects, you need them. So, like, is it like going to be a bunch of guy for guy trades just to shore up the depth, just to get through it? I think that's definitely a consideration that's going to be made. But I also I get the sense that the front office is going to be reluctant to kind of do that. Does that make sense?
It's a hard thing because they clearly need bodies in right now. God, do they need bodies in right now? In that the it, the pieces that they are hoping to move on from aren't performing and likely will not be moved on from because there's not a lot of value for them, which is frustrating in its own right. But also, they can't really afford to get rid of anything without cleaning out the AHL and a team that is also fighting for development and playoff spots. And I know people are going to go, well, the AHL shouldn't matter. It's the NHL's end result. But the Canadiens have committed to making the best environment possible for development. And it becomes a very interesting what do you do? Do you sacrifice the AHL for the NHL? Because the Rocket are in 6th place right now in their division, 1 point out of the final playoff spot, and 2 points out of being in 3rd place. The division is this tight out there that any half decent winning streak in your divisional games puts you there. We should mention Joshua Wall was recalled to Montreal. He played against the Blues on Sunday. We will get into why he was recalled in our next segment there. It's becoming a point that what does this team do? Alex Newhook's playing at center right now. It's not perfect, but it is better than 2 AHL centers in the lineup at one time. I can understand why Brandon Gignac is here, and as a 4th-line center, fine, perfectly cromulent. But you're asking a lot of Jake Evans and Nick Suzuki, and you don't want to burn out your star player before that. So now, what do? I think Martin St. Louis has to go back to the drawing board. You leave the top line alone, but you got to kind of shuffle things again with injuries and whatnot and figure out what works.
And I think for me, just the really one quick thing is that Brendan Gignac, this is a reward for him, right? He's played so well, as you said, Scott, and so many people kept asking us why they won't give him an NHL contract, or they kept asking us why won't they call him up, and then they finally did. They gave him an NHL contract. This is not something that you want ruining his career, right?
Yeah, it's this is a reward for being a huge piece of the Rocket this year, point per game player. a really solid piece the last couple years, and he got a contract extension out of it. He's extended into next season now. They very much value him as a leader at the AHL level and as a guy who can now fill in at the NHL level. And he's going to be filling in potentially a lot more in a lot of other situations. Not only did the Habs lose 2 games this weekend, which in and of itself is terrible, and we don't love that. They lost definitely 2 players and are soon to potentially lose a third to injuries. And we will touch on what happened there, some of the other down negative things from this weekend coming up next. But first, as I said off the top of the show, today's show is brought to you by the fine folks at Sleeper. We have passed the midway point of the season. And yes, we know the Montreal Canadiens are going to be picking top 5 again, but you still want to tune in to see what Juraj Slafkovsky and Nick Suzuki can do if Cole Caulfield can keep his apparently playmaking streak going. And if you want to tune in and get the most out of hockey, I recommend playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper because you can win up to 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether guys like Nathan McKinnon, a suddenly red-hot Alexander Ovechkin, Connor McDavid will record more or less than their Sleeper projections and things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, or more in any given game. And to win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. That's it. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Just use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That is Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. If you have questions that aren't going to fit into the arbitrary text amount on Twitter, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. My co-host is at The Active Stick, and I'm at Scott Matla. And Laura, we thought the Canadiens were kind of turning a corner. Yeah, Kirby Dach was going to be out for the season, but hey, Alex Newhook's back. We know Christian Dvorak's done, but Arbor Jackey's coming back up from the AHL. Rafaël Harvey-Pinard's coming back from his previous injury. And then this weekend happened, and everything went right out the window in the worst possible way for the Canadiens, who are now very thin in a couple of spots that were unexpected. I can't overstate how sad I am about all that. It's like none of them are back. Well, one of them potentially is, but a bunch of small things adding up at once for a team that is in a very fragile spot is kind of tough to take. And again, it's not even that this is they had an injury setback or anything like that. They just got hurt in the middle of a game in some freak instances or on, dirty hits. And I am truly wondering who the Canadiens offended so deeply to have this level of injury luck.
Honestly, I don't even know at this point because it just seems like this is the 3rd year in a row that we're talking about this, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. Like last year, we had legitimate questions about the conditioning of these guys, the trainers, the medical staff. In the off season, like there were some that were scapegoated and some were changed out. Maybe they'd been there too long. But now at this point, like all of these seem to be just really luck based. They're not like conditioning based. And they seem like I don't even know, because when I'm watching those players, it's not like they seem like they're playing by taking unnecessary risks. Like, how sometimes people are a little bit reckless, they play the body too much, and then they regret it later. Brendan Gallagher comes to mind, right? Somebody like that. Like, they're not playing at that level. It just feels like whatever they're doing, they're always in the wrong place at the wrong time, facing the wrong people or the wrong boards.
And that's the thing is, it's like Brendan Gallagher is able to come back in the next couple days here. I believe he's eligible to play in the Rangers game right now. But at the same time, Rafaël Harvey-Pinard was put on IR after colliding with Yoel Armia in the Stars game, which looked like a really bad knee injury. So he is out at least a week. Jordan Harris was knocked out cold, concussed, and I'm pretty confident in saying that because I watched the replay in which he tries to get up and cannot, and very clearly was not here. I don't think Sammy Blais intentionally tried to slam his heads into the board or anything like that. It was a timing thing on a hit he could have let up on, but I don't think it was malicious in any way. That knocked Harris out of the game in the opening period against St. Louis. And then late in the game, Marco Scandella hits Kaiden Guhle from behind. Guhle gets up favoring what looked like his arm elbow area as he was helped off the ice. He skated off, but is clearly kind of in pain. And it's like I said in the first segment, they've already recalled Joshua Waugh. Great. If Kaiden Guhle is hurt for any amount of time, this is a team that is going to feel that. I think Kaiden Guhle is the second most important defenseman on this team and will soon be the most important defenseman on this team whenever they decide what they're going to do with Mike Matheson. But it is asking a lot now that you're going to need Jaden Struble, who had an up and down weekend. I don't think he was as bad as commentary made it seem this weekend. Arbor Jack Eye.
A little sky is falling. To
Yeah,
be honest.
it's
or like it was like his streak is over and then he's just going to go back to being not good when there's no evidence to show that he's ever been not good, right? Like that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and then because I believe Jack Eye was the scratch for this, that it's like, okay, well, you have Justin Barron, you have Logan Mailloux in the AHL, you have William Trudeau. Are any of them going to move the needle there without hampering even the Rocket too much? Then, a spot where you have cultivated a defensive pairing system that have brought out the best in a lot of these players here. I'm worried about what this team might do now because they know Harvey-Pinard's going to be out for a minute. Obviously, Sean Monahan has gone to the desolate Winter Palace of Winnipeg there. You have Jordan Harris, who's going to be out probably a good chunk of time with that head injury. I would prefer him not being rushed back. And it again goes into what does Martin St. Louis do now when he is juggling lines further? In that Harvey-Pinard, while not a superstar, not maybe a core piece, is still a guy who kills penalties, is a power play user, can be moved up and down the lineup here. And you are now taking that out of the lineup. You've already recalled Joshua Waugh. Emil Heineman was injured on Friday for the Rocket. He did not play on Saturday. Who else are you calling up? You can call up Lias Andersson. You can call up Philippe Maillet, which I don't think they're going to do. You could call up Xavier Simoneau, potentially. You could call up a Jan Mysak or whatever, but is that going to be any good for these players right now? Lias Andersson is probably fine because he is what he is. He's probably that tweener player for this team right now. But for younger prospects, it's kind of hard to put something in there. And the injuries, I think, overshadow a lot of Saturday. And now on Sunday are going to be forgotten because of how bad the game was. But they lost a lot of bodies. And I know that we usually do 3 up and 3 down on Mondays, and we're kind of dedicating a whole segment to the injuries because there's so much that's hanging over here. We do have to talk about the goaltending, and Jake Allen was not it on Saturday or Sunday.
He just doesn't want to get traded. That's my theory. He wants to stay here.
Then I wish that, one of the other 2 goalies ask for a trade. Well, it won't be Montembeault because he's the starter, but just do something now because Allen needs to play more because every time he comes off the bench for one of these, he has a game. I watched a goal that bounced off the glass behind him and it just kind of rolled towards the net and he slowly, just let it kind of trickle in. It went in his pad and into the net. And it's like, these are things that cannot happen. And that I know Caden Primo is far from a proven quantity here and that Jake Allen is, but this is unacceptable. This was a game where the Canadiens got sunk by the goaltending and then the injuries overshadowed that. And yes, it's a short lineup and the team is bad. Make a save. I try to not just go out and just say, make a save like it's the easiest thing in the world. But there were at least 3 goals in that game that I looked at and go, you gotta do better than that. If you're the Canadiens and you were doing everything except getting a bounce by Jordan Binnington and you're watching your goaltender at the other end let in muffins, you start to play worse defensively because you're panicking every time the puck goes the other way if it's going to go in. And it's no good. I don't. If they get an offer for anything for Allen at this point, just take it. Go, get rid of it. Do whatever. I
I
don't.
remember at the beginning of this season, I was watching a Game Over episode, and I feel like it was our good friend Ian Boisvert that was on it. Ian Boisvert. Sorry, I'm making you very French now. Boisvert that was on, and we're talking about like who cares what the return is at this point, Kent Hughes, whether it's a third rounder or a fifth rounder, just do it. Like at this point, I don't even think he's going to net a fifth rounder or a sixth or whatever. Like I feel like at this point, it's a bag of pucks.
I was gonna say like we made fun of. Oh, we have an injury update. Rafaël Harvey-Pinard will miss 4 to 6 weeks with a lower body injury. Jordan Harris is day-to-day with an upper body injury. Kaiden Guhle is still being evaluated. I am going to redacted on this podcast because we are a family show. If anyone wants my uncensored thoughts, you can follow me on Twitter at Scott Matla for the rest of that. At this point, we made fun of the Leafs for offering a 6th round pick, and I go, I might actually take that at this point, just because let Primo play. And if he's going to be cheeks, at least it means we're getting a better draft pick out of it, and we can worry about that down the line. However, it is Monday. Everyone's going back to work. The NFL season is going to be over. So we want to end on a good note. We're going to talk about some of the good things happening around the Canadiens organization. A lot of great prospect news. A very funny comparison that someone pointed out to me on Twitter. And we're going to get into all that and more coming up next. But before we do, today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel, and get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet on FanDuel. That's $150 if your bet wins. So like, come on. Are the Pistons going to be historically bad? Are the Raptors going to make our boss sad? Probably. And you can look for live same game parlays, exclusive props, and quick bets with all your favorite NBA action there on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked on and shoot your shot with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA and us here at Locked On. All right. So we always try to end our 3 up and 3 down episode, unless I have forgotten to organize things properly, in which case, my bad. Sometimes I'm very tired, but we always try to end with the good stuff. And the Laval Rocket had quite a weekend against the Toronto Marlies. They haven't played Toronto in quite a while this season, which is good for my own mental and physical well-being. They lost 6-1 on Friday and lost Emil Heineman to an injury, and things were poopy and bad and nobody was happy. And then they came out on Saturday, days are hard, without Joshua Waugh, without Emil Heineman, with Kazimir Kaskisuo in net, and hung 7 goals on the Toronto Marlies. And the Rocket are continuing to be full value in one direction or the other. And now, Laura, I'm going to read you a stat line very quickly as soon as I bring it up here. And I'm going to read you another stat line as well. And I want you to tell me who they belong to, because I think it is very funny that we are going to do this. This player, they are 20 years old, playing in the AHL right now. They have played 42 games, have 18 goals and 14 assists, and are a -4. And then player 2 is also 20 years old, soon to be 21, has played 45 games in the AHL this year, has 11 goals, 21 assists, and is a 0 ±. Who is player 1?
Okay, well, I already know one of them. I have no idea who the other one is. The only reason I know one of them is because I know it's Logan Mailloux.
Yes. Well, Logan Mailloux is player 2. Player 1 is the glare master himself, Shane Wright.
What?
Shane Wright has 32 points in 42 games for the Coachella Valley Firebirds in the AHL this season. So he has the exact same amount of points as Logan Mailloux. The difference is Logan Mailloux is a defenseman playing on a team that is struggling to find consistency, whereas Coachella is the second best team in the Western Conference, and he is playing as a forward. A lot of people we talk about the whole Slafkovsky comparison and the Shane Wright things and this and that. Shane Wright has still not played. I think he's played 3 NHL games this year. Slafkovsky in his last 22 games has 16 points, and I believe is closing in on. Everyone was talking about how Logan Cooley was lighting up the score sheet and this and that. Logan Cooley has 25 points. Juraj Slafkovsky has 24 after today's game. Slafkovsky has 4 more goals, and it'll be 4 less assists, 4 less assists than that. For all the hand wringing that kind of came out about that, part of this was to point out that Logan Mailloux has been playing very well, even with, we still have concerns about some of his defensive issues that he has worked on those. The offense has come very naturally at the next level. I want to point out that Juraj Slafkovsky, and we talked about this in the first segment, the more good he does every game, the less and less that I care about the scoreline, because his development is so crucial. And Laura, you watched more of Saturday's game than I did, but compared to last season, Juraj Slafkovsky is just an entirely different player at this point.
Like, we kept talking about, like, will he take the next step? I think he's taken like 5 steps, right? I think he's definitely showing us why they have that confidence in him. And he's definitely showing us why so many people took notice of him in those international tournaments before really anybody kind of really cared all that much, before it was Shane Wright versus Juraj Slafkovsky. So the more time goes on, the more confidence I have in that choice that the Canadiens made. And he seems to be also adapting very well to the attention that he gets here. Um, they're, um, like, he seems to not be letting it get to his head. He seems to be able to manage it. He seems to be able to, he's even like being humorous about it. Like, there was this interview with him, I believe it was in a Slovakian paper and then translated. So I don't know if I'm accurately translating this, but it was, he's going to give you his attention and his autograph and stuff, but only if you're nice, which I thought was really funny. Like, it was like kind of humorous where he's like, he's taking it all in stride. He's understanding his star status, and he's also not letting it get to his head. And I thought that was, like, he just seems to be a lot more calm than he used to be. And that's resulting in him making the better decisions and making the right decisions, and also doing that thing that we want him to do, which is anticipating play. Like, that was something that we didn't think he was necessarily doing to the best of his ability last year. And I think this year, the fact that he's participating with that instinct, like the choices that he's making are instinctual and they're the right ones, right? So I think maybe he was overthinking it potentially before. He wasn't trusting his instincts, or maybe his instincts have just grown with his maturity level. I don't know. But there seems to be a sort of presence on the ice that is like well thought out, in addition to using his extremely large body to make plays.
And that's the thing, is that he just seems so much more confident. And that I don't really know how else to say it, is that he just looks like a completely new player, is that he's doing things with authority and just absolutely he fits seamlessly on a line with Suzuki and Caulfield, and they're all making each other better. Like, Caulfield's going to end the season with over 30 assists if he keeps up this pace, which is not what we expected on a line where Nick Suzuki was going to be the playmaker and Caulfield the finisher, and then X third winger was going to be that. And Andrew Berkshire on Twitter just posted a thread about this, that Nick Suzuki, even in a weekend where they are getting blown out, Nick Suzuki's doing some incredible things statistically. And it is just, for all the talk, is Nick Suzuki a 1C? Is he actually worthy of being captain? Was he worth that contract? The answer is yes. And he's doing this without Kirby Dach, without Sean Monahan, without even Christian Dvorak, that I know that there are flaws. He's doing this with Jake Evans, a winger playing center, and an AHL center. And he is just carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He is such an impressive player. To kind of transition to one final, like, really important thing I wanted to talk about here. Owen Beck, since being traded to Saginaw and coming back from World Juniors, in 15 games has 24 points. He has 9 goals and 15 assists. He had 30 points in Peterborough in 25 games earlier this year. Lauren Kelly will probably be able to tell us more. We're hoping to get her on the show heading into draft season here, so we can talk about all of our favorite OHL people.
In particular, Owen Beck.
In particular, Owen Beck, who is just lighting it up. And I know a lot of people are ready to slide him into the NHL lineup and everything, but if I don't highlight how good how good Owen Beck has been recently, I'm going to get yelled at for that. And it's amazing what a change of scenery can do for a player there. And then Lane Hutson is Lane Hutson. He has 35 points in 25 games this year. He's absolutely silly. And I love him to death because he infuriates so many people because they're like, he shouldn't be good because he's tiny. And to which I say, well, you should have drafted him then. And that's your problem. He is actually the highest scoring defenseman in the NCAA this year. The next closest person is Zeev Buyam behind him, but Lane Hutson does Lane Hutson things, and we love when Lane Hutson does Lane Hutson things because soon he will be doing Lane Hutson things in a Montreal Canadiens uniform, and I'm very excited. Laura, did you have anyone else you wanted to shout out before we wrapped up the show today?
I'm going to be honest. Mine was Slafkovsky this week. My big one was I wanted to talk a lot about him, so we did that.
I was going to say, and we will talk plenty more about him. As long as he keeps giving us reasons to talk about him, we will keep checking in with that. Until next time, we are Locked On Canadiens. You can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens, LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. If you were wondering if we're going to touch the Morgan Riley situation, tomorrow's episode, because we need to dedicate enough time to cover all of that and the responses we've seen from there. Follow Laura on Twitter at The Active Stick. Follow me at Scott Malice. Subscribe wherever you get your daily podcast, and we will see you all next time.